Hi, my name is Matt. Welcome to Real 73. Please forgive me if you hear some background noise. It's hot out, the air conditioning is kicking up, and there's some construction going on next door, which is needed because it's been a cesspool. But anyway, it's time for Stranger Things Season 1, Episode 1 review. I'll be doing an episode by episode review. Since the first three seasons have been out for a while, there's a deep spoiler for each episode. It's basically me giving my opinion of what's going on and all that. Only in the first episode, I'm not going to go over the background details for the show. So the first episode will be a little longer for that reason. And I'll conclude the end of each season with a kind of summary review of what I think happened and what I thought about it. Once I have it all together, so to speak. And again, on the production elements part, I'm only really going to go into it in the first episode of each season. If there's any, to see if when I watch the episode, see if there's any noticeable changes from the season before. And otherwise, I'll skip that unless there's something specific about those production elements that I want to call out for the episode. And those elements, by the way, that I tend to go over are the either the visuals, the direction, the writing, the acting, the special effects, or the sound and audio. There's others besides that, but those are the ones where in my opinion, that matter most. So let's do some background. Let me give you some of my background so you might understand the context of why I watched the first season back in 2017, and never really returned to this series. Okay? So in 2016, I had a series of health problems that involved infections and ultimately a 60-pound tumor on my groin. It took until 2020 to resolve all this and get some surgery done and, get a more normal life going. I'm still rebuilding from that point, So I remember watching Stranger Things back then, but it never really stuck with me. Like, I kind of enjoyed it, I thought, thinking back, but it didn't, say, okay, let me wait for that next season. It didn't pop in my head, I mean, given all the medical stuff I was going through was affecting me psychologically, most of the content I really dove into to distract myself was proven favorites, things I already owned tons of books or movies or whatever on, franchises like the Lord of the Rings or Star Trek or Godzilla or the works of Lovecraft or stuff I basically had piles of, comic books I have piles of. I wasn't looking for anything new on the off chance it wasn't going to work to distract me. So that's kind of why a lot of new stuff from 2016 to 2020 I kind of missed. So the show returned to my attention this year. Ooh, excuse me. This year, season 4, and a lot of people said it was really good. I should watch it, and they're hyping it up. So I said I'm going to go back. We watched the first season, and then work my way through the following seasons, and hopefully I'll catch up by the time the second part of season 4 comes out. And I'm going to do an episode by episode review, which, if you see the pattern, my reviews for this type of thing is 5 to 10 minutes at most. I'm not going to bog you down with 30-minute per episode breakdown, because that's just not the type of reviews I tend to do, unless I really hate something or really, really, really love it. What is Stranger Things? Okay. Stranger Things is a TV show created by the Duffer Brothers. They are Matt and Ross Duffer, who were twins that were born in 1984, which makes sense, or at least provides context. Their early childhood was in the 1980s. They have a sense of nostalgia and seeing maybe their older siblings play D&D and all that. So that might make sense why they go back to the show. Now, I do remember their other TV show, Wayward Pines. I remember kind of liking it, but I thought there was only one season. Apparently, there was 2 when I looked it up. So I'm going to have to revisit that one too. But, Stranger Things is categorized as a science fiction horror show, which it certainly could be, but there's a term urban fantasy, which is a more modern term, which kind of encapsulates what this show has going on better than any other way to phrase it. It takes place in a fictional town named Hawkins in rural Indiana in the 80s. The Hawkins National Laboratory from the U.S. Department of Defense is a major feature in the area of the town. This lab officially performs scientific research in the energy field, but actually does experiments in paranormal and supernatural areas. Classic setup for this type of show. The lab at some point opens a portal, either accidentally or purposely, in another dimension, referred to as the Upside Down, and that begins spilling over and influencing the Earth. Again, classic sort of setup. Stephen King's The Mist had that sort as a setup. Kind of happens in the Dresden Files in the books, though from a more magical point of view, several times. Stranger Things has a large ensemble cast that's only increased over time. And if I just went over the cast, which I would normally do in a show like this, it would be like the Stranger Things cast. I could be here for like another hour just doing that. So I'll just mention highlight performances as they come up and whatnot, in the episodes. And one more thing, The series is associated with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Time period wise, the kids most likely would have been playing what we call first edition or just AD&D, but there are actually two older versions that it could have been: the gray box and the brown box, or the pamphlets basically. Pamphlet D&D is, or OD&D, OD&D, like old D&D. Now let's just talk about the production elements. Okay. So again, I'll only be touching on these in detail in this first episode, and then of each season. Okay, and then honestly, in the succeeding season, I'm only going to go into the production in detail after the first episode if I notice a significant change, like a different directors or different special effects company or whatever. So the visuals. In this first episode, we get a good job. It does a real good job of not annoying the audience when scenes occur in the darker night. Other shows or movies have a habit where when they use nighttime settings to hide incomplete special effects or limits of special effects, and furthermore, they have when things happen at night, they make it so the audience can see. Remember, the audience is an omniscient presence, meaning we should be able to see what's happening in the dark, unless it's used to create a certain mood. The problem is if you do too much of that, it annoys the audience. You got to get a good balance between showing what's happening in dark areas or at night versus hiding some of it with it being night, and they do a good balance here. I expect that to continue because the Dust Brothers basically control this whole season from what I see, like direction, writing, production, and all that. On the other hand, the show seems to be creating atmospheric moods, or what I call the dingy lighting effect, which is when regular lighting in, say, the kitchen or else is subpar. As an example, in the basement, in the opening of this first episode, the kids are playing D&D. The lighting is very dingy. Here's some inside info for those of you who never played any role-playing games, especially back in the day, okay? You have to read a lot of very tiny text in the books you get for these materials. You're paying $20 for a book, but the book has what would be like $30 worth of information in it because they made the text so small to get a ton of it in there. And crappy lighting annoyed the hell out of us. Like if we were in the basement and, standard little dingy light bulb, we would get 6 other lights, hang Christmas lights up, get spotlights just so we could see what we're doing. Because tabletop RPGs are a very visual thing. I just see when the kids scramble for the dice, because that's a rule. There's 2 rules. Either you have an on the table rule and it goes off the table, you have to re-roll, or you have a rule where wherever the dice winds up, it matters. And if your dice disappears, well, that means basically you a lot of times we interpret it as a critical failure, which means something bad happens. That's why the kids are scrambling for that die. So those are my comments about the visuals. Direction. If the Duffers direct the rest of the episodes like this one, I have no complaints. Writing, got a few quibbles here. I thought the scene where the secret government agents tried to retrieve 11 was badly written. I have a feeling the Duffers went by what they learned in spy movies and such for how they wrote this. In reality, the secret group would want to be really secret. They would let an actual protective... either they would send a person the kid would not possibly know to be under the pretense of with actual documentation of being a child protective service worker. They'd have an ID, they'd have court orders and such, or they would let real child protective services pick the kid up, and then after the kid's isolated, maybe in the car driving away, or somewhere like that, then they'd go for the move. Okay, they would not. It's awful hard to be covert when you murder a major presence in the town. The owner of a restaurant is a major presence, okay? And they can cover all they want, but the guy's going to be missing. The sheriff's going to be investigating. His family's going to be demanding such. His business is going out of business, and all the employees. It's a real covert agency wouldn't do that sort of thing. And another issue with the writing, this episode was very dense. Here you hear some thundering of a dumpster next door. This issue was very dense. I mean, they compressed a lot of plot points and subplots into this. Now, and I think they could have a few. I haven't watched. I don't remember what happened. If anything happened with the episode with some of these, but they could have gotten rid of a few. Like for example, just have Will's real dad be dead. Instead of having him be have run away and met a girlfriend or whatever in another state. It's unless they really go someplace with it, I don't see it as being needed for the plot of the show. And likewise, they give the sheriff too many vices, and if these vices don't pay off, if he doesn't come up that he's indolent, he's drug addicted, he's an alcoholic, a smoker, a slob. If they don't come up after they showed detailed scenes of establishing the sheriff's character of having all those problems. If those problems don't come back as part of the plot to haunt you, then they basically just wasted your time. And you're going to feel dissatisfied as an audience member. So, All I'm saying is whenever I see something densely written like this, I worry about some plot that's falling by the wayside and leading to dissatisfaction. Think about the X-Files or Naruto, you know? And I love Naruto, and I love the X-Files, but I recognize the flaws in them. There was so much going on that in Naruto's case, Kishimoto just compressed it all into the fourth arc, and a lot of had dissatisfying conclusions and whatnot, you know. I did like a lot of little details that they introduced, though, from the writing point of view. The kids all had nerd hobbies set, RPGs, science, walkie-talkies, and so on. And the families weren't just placeholders. We saw each of the families that we saw had differing family dynamics that looked like realistic in terms of how a family in the 80s might have had that. On the acting, so far so good. You know, special effects, not much to talk about yet. There's a couple of quick scenes, like when Will was kidnapped and whatnot. That you saw some sound special effects more than anything, which I get toward the next part. I like the audio and sound effects a lot. They're well done and well timed. So now up to the plot. Basically, hijinks happen at the Hawkins laboratory, which lead to someone or something taking Will Breyer right out of his home, and the mysterious child Levin escapes from the lab. Simple and straightforward. Those are your two major plots, and they intersect, and everything else should be a subset of those plots. Okay, in theory. I liked how the sheriff's character progressed from less serious to trying to get on top of the missing child issue. Now, for those who aren't old enough to recall, haven't read about this, that's how it used to be when a kid went missing. It just wasn't very highly prioritized. And sometime in the mid-'80s or maybe the early '90s, science and database policing methods started to alter police procedures. And then someone knows that if a kid's missing more than 24 hours, he's likely to be dead. You're never going to find him. And as each hour passes that the kid is missing, the odds of the kid being found increase significantly. Meaning not being found increase significantly. And once they notice all that, now there's all sorts of standard procedures when a kid goes missing. The FBI is called in very early. They have special units in the police to deal with that. Search happens right away. So a kid's missing, search right away. Send cops out to investigate, organize, and so forth. You know. That's a modern take, and the show depicts how it used to be, which is very accurate, I think. As I mentioned, I thought the scene with the secret government agent trying to recover 11 wasn't well done. It was almost comical. I do like how we know as audience up front that the spooky stuff is real. We see the powers and us and stuff right away. Another RPG note for those who don't know what the Demogorgon is and why the kids are making a big deal about it. So what the Demogorgon is, he's a demon whose mythological origin is unclear, but the historians think is of Greek origin. Generally speaking, mythologically, the Demogorgon was a primordial demon or a primordial demonic force older even than the gods. That's how the Greek concept of it. And there's a concept in Greek mythology called the demiurge, like the primordial force. They think the Demogorgon was a mistranslation of that when a lot of Greek mythology was absorbed and modified by the Romans. So when the Latin writers are translating it, they think there could have been a misinterpretation there. Okay. So naturally, we get fast forward to the Middle Ages, and Christianity made a particular entity. And to be honest, most of the lore about the Demogorgon is made up stuff from the Middle Ages, either in the religious context or the literary context. So Christian writers like Dante, depict him as one of the most powerful demons in hell. Faust has the Demogorgon showing up, and of course, when AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, needed to create a bunch of demon prints for the setting for players to oppose, the Demogorgon was chosen as one of the first ones in 1976 in the publication Eldritch Wizardry. And you might have heard me going back about calling him Demogorgon and the Demogorgon. Most of us players who played him in the first and second edition era and the OD&D, which is a little older, like the 70s D&D, call him the Demogorgon for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know why we do it that way. But we just do. And I've noticed while some of that trend continues with younger players who play the 3rd, 4th, 5th edition, they tend to, how do you put it, a lot of times he's just Demogorgon. Right? So that's that for you. Final thoughts. I enjoyed the first episode. I remember enjoying it back then, even though if I was more distracted back then. I certainly got more out of it this time watching it than I did the first time, because this time I'm not like violently ill for all that, you know. I thought it was a little bogged down, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And obviously, I'm going to do the next 20 episodes to get to the third season, 30 episodes or so anyway. So My name is Matt. This has been Umbrella 73. Comment down below if you have any questions for me about this episode or mention the series or in general. Or if you have any video suggestions, share this video if you enjoyed it. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.